Hello everyone, my name is Mike Benedetto. Thanks for joining the Harness the Power of Your Data webinar. Amy Schneider, our resident data visualization specialist, will be presenting some great information for you today. If you have questions or technical difficulties, please enter them into the chat. We'll try to answer them at the end. If we don't get to your question during webinar time, we will reach out to you later. Amy, please take it away.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay? A little technical check here. Mike?
I can hear you, Amy.
Great.
You're good.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Harness the Power of Your Data. So as Mike said, my name is Amy Schneider, and I'm a data visualization specialist here at Netrix. Power BI is the application we'll be working with today. This is a Microsoft product that is a part of the Microsoft Office 365 stack. It is a BI tool, so a tool used to analyze and model data and then present that data with visualizations and data visualizations and other features that integrate with the O365 stack. So in today's presentation, I'm going to go through high level the steps of or the pieces and parts of Power BI, and then what some reports can look like and how you can publish those up to the web service and use them within your organization. So Power BI has two pieces. It has both a desktop application that is a free application, and it also has a web service portion. This is where you can publish your reports and distribute them within an organization. So I've put up on the screen here a sample report. This is a test data set that is going through some sales numbers for a fictitious company called Van Arsdale. Now, just a little heads up, I can never say this company, so I always end up saying Van Arsenal. So as I progress through this webinar, I'll be referring to it as Van Arsenal, but it is Van Arsdale. So a little bit about the background for this report that I have up on the screen. So this company engaged a third-party marketing firm to collect some sales data across their multiple locations in across the world. So this third party came in and collected all this data and gave it to the Van Arsenal company to do with what they want. So this came in the form of multiple spreadsheets, and I'm going to go ahead and show you those as well, just to show the disparate data sources here. So we have multiple spreadsheets. We have some for the US, we have some dimensions, we have some international sales from Australia, France, Mexico. We have some sales from Germany here. So you can see we have several disparate data sources here. Now, Power BI can connect to over 85 data sources out of the box. It can also connect to custom data sources if you wanted to design your own connectors. But for the purposes of this demo, I'm going to go ahead and use Excel as my data source. So you can see here I have multiple sheets showing multiple data collections, and I want to integrate all of these into a report that shows and can extract different data, can take that data and analyze it and use it to extract business decisions, right? So what I've done is I've loaded all of these spreadsheets into Power BI. So Power BI is backed by what's called Power Query. This is the mashup engine Microsoft uses to edit and model and shape the data. So I can load all of my different data sources, and that can be Excel or SQL or SAP HANA or any of the numerous data sets, data sources that are out there. Now I can combine them, I can have them on-prem, I can have them in the cloud, and I can bring them all into a single pane of glass, right? So I have my sales data sheet, my date data sheet. So these are all from the separate spreadsheets that I had in my Windows folder. So I've pulled them all into Power Query so that I can do some data modeling. So in the sales table, I've run through a set of modeling steps. So as it came in with the column headers as column 1, 2, 3. So within Power BI, I chose to promote those headers by simply clicking Use First Row as headers. So, excuse me, once I selected those headers to be promoted, I also want to change some of my data types. So I can change my data type from a number to a text to a date or time. So I've gone ahead and modeled this data the way that I want it to be used. So revenue, I've changed the revenue type to dollars. So you can see in my next step, this is now showing as a dollars because these are obviously in US dollars. I have the ability to also change the way that this is displayed once we load this into the canvas for design. So I'll show you that step later. We've also wanted to combine we have two different sales spreadsheets. We have a sales spreadsheet for the US and we have a sales spreadsheet for international sales. And as you can see here, I have different countries. I can filter these countries by selecting load more, and it's going to come in here and show me all the countries I have available. You can see the different countries that are contained within the spreadsheet. So once it loads all of these, I'm going to have the option to filter out. I could filter out countries I don't want to see, or I could leave them all selected. In this case, I'm going to leave them all selected. But I want to combine the international sales with the US sales, so I just have a single table to draw off of. So back on my sales table, I'm going to go ahead and append the query. So I'm going to append the international sales table to the US sales table. And once I do that, we'll see that I now have a country column that has null for USA and then has all the other country data listed below. I won't scroll all the way down, there's quite a few rows. But we now have all of our sales data in a single table. And we've added a custom column that says if the country value is null, we know that's USA, so we want to replace the value with the USA. And once we've done that, we don't really need the country column. So now we have country name. So how is this useful? So the point of doing this is to do that data transformation one time. I kind of use the analogy of set it and forget it, right? So every time Power BI loads this data, it's going to run through these steps in sequence. Once these steps have been executed and you click apply and close, it's now going to load this data into Power BI. So we can see that on our left-hand side, or our right-hand side here, we have our 5 tables that we loaded into Power Query, manipulated and modeled, and now we have them available for use. So I'm going to take just a few seconds here to go over some of the layout of the Power BI desktop. So Power BI Desktop is a free application. You can download it from powerbi.com. You can just put in the search, download powerbi.com, and then download the desktop version. It is free to use. It's full featured. You do not have to have a license in order to use this application. So feel free to go download it and start playing with it at any time. So once I've downloaded it, I have the ability to add any of the data sources that Microsoft has canned. And like I said, there's over 85. Just a couple of your basic ones, text, Excel. You can load an entire folder worth of data, SharePoint, SQL, Won't go through all of them, but these are, you can find these online if you want a full listing. We have all of our Azure, again, Dynamics, Google Analytics, so some of your big databases out there, so lots and lots of connectors. So we can add these connectors and add to our report, or we can make new reports. But again, that you get all of these when you download the desktop application. So one little hint, when you download the desktop application, you'll want to go into File, Options and Settings, and turn on all your preview features. These are features that have come out in the latest release of Power BI and are in preview, obviously. But there's some really great stuff that gets released. So you just go ahead and check all of the previews that you want to look at, and then you'll need to restart the application. So you want to do that first before you start building. That way you have all of the features available to you. I'm not going to do that right now, but just wanted to give everyone a heads up. That way they get the most recent features. So across the top, we have our menu for all of our report building. So we can add visuals, add a page, some buttons, text box, images, shapes. We have a marketplace. This is for custom visuals, which I'll touch on later. Custom color theming, I will also touch on this later. Our relationships. So this is the way we're going to tie the different tables together. We can create new measures and columns, and then publish our reports ultimately up into the Power BI web service. Along the left-hand side, we have 3 different views of your report. This is your canvas, so your visualization design area. This is your data view. So let's say you wanted to see the actual rows of data that you have. You can go ahead and click on this view, and now you can actually view the data that is contained within the report. And I can see that. And then we have a third view, which is our relationships. So again, how do we tie the tables together? So this gives you a nice graphical interface to see how all of your tables relate to each other. You can also get to this same relationships by clicking here, and it'll give you a listing of the relationships where you can edit or create new ones. So we're going to spend a majority of our time in the design canvas today. Coming over to the right-hand side, we have several panes here. We have our fields pane. This is where we're going to have the data fields that we're going to use in our report, and our visualizations pane. So our visualizations pane is how we're creating all these tiny visualizations, is what they're called. So I can select any of these to add new or change. I also have some additional tabs here. I have the Fields tab. This is where we're going to add the different values we want to analyze. And then our Formatting tab. So if I were to select a visual, I have an array of formatting options to make this visual look exactly like I want. So as we go through the building here, I'm not going to, as you can see, I've already have this report built. This is actually a report that is part of a dashboard in a day session that I'll speak to a little later today. But I want to spend some time today doing some of the more interesting features. So I'll go through creating a couple of visuals so you can see how it's done, but then we're going to go ahead and make some edits to this report. So I can add a new page in multiple different ways. I selected the plus sign, but you can also come to the top tab and say new page here. And this will give you a blank page or duplicate page. So how do I create visuals? So I have a nice white canvas here. I have multiple ways of doing it. I can select the new visual from the top, or I can click on one of these images here on the right in my visualizations pane, or I can actually just start dragging data onto the canvas. So if I were to go to manufacturer and put manufacturer on here, Power BI is going to guess at what visual it thinks is going to be the most useful. And in this, there's some coloring format here I got to fix, but basically I decided a table was the best bet for this one. I have the ability to change that very easily. I can change the style of the table. I'm trying to get the text change here, so I can change my values to a different color. I can change the backgrounds. We'll say light gray. Now we're starting to see some of these. But there's so many formatting options that you actually can search. So let's say I wanted to see all the fonts I could change. I'm sorry, all the colors I could change. This is going, if I type colors in the search box here, it's going to show me all the formatting options I have that allow me to change the color. I can change the different fields. So every visual has a different set of formatting. So if I were to change this to a graph here, and I'm going to add some values, so this is relevant, we'll throw, I can also just drag the field right onto the visual. And now I have a graph here that's showing me the revenue by manufacturer. So I clear out my search, and we can see that I have a whole new set of formatting options. There's also a third pane here that allows some visuals have some extra analytics options. So always check this out. You can add some trend lines or average lines that give you that nice comparison on the visual. We'll see that here on the report on the Van Arsenal sales overview. So here we have that same trend line, or the same average line. So we have a couple of some dimensional data, right? So I want to show those relationships. So we have our sales table, which is our values, but then we have product, manufacturer, geography, and date. So we'll see in our relationships that we've linked these tables all to the sales table. So what that means is when I filter, when I use the date field, it's going to filter the values in the sales table. Similarly, if I use my city, state, or region, that's going to also filter my sales table by that category, right? And then the same for product and manufacturer. So that allows us to use a single date slicer to control the entire report. So if I were to slide this slider to 2008, you can see all my graphs on this page are updated relative to the selection I've picked. And this is from my date table. And that works because of that relationship we put in place. So let's go through some updates here. I want to show some of the more fun features that have been released in 2018 for Power BI. I'm not going to be able to cover all of them. Power BI is updated on a monthly basis, which means every month around the 10th of the month, they come out with new features in both the Power Query transformation side as well as the reporting side and the visuals. The web service is always also updated monthly. I believe they're updated toward the end of the month, but I definitely recommend subscribing to the Power BI blog to get alerted to those new feature releases. So some of the cool new things that have come out. The first one I want to go over is tooltips. So tooltips is this great little feature that pops up when you hover over the data points on your visual. So as you can see in this visual, I'm showing revenue by manufacturer. However, when I hover over my data points, I can actually see the units as well per manufacturer. So these are the default tooltips. You can actually add more tooltips if you want. So if I click on this visual and I go to the tooltips section, I could add year-to-date variance here, and now when I hover over this, I'm going to get that additional value. I don't know if you guys can see, it added it under the units for each manufacturer. So this was the default tooltips. In not sure which month, but sometime this year, they released the ability to do actual visuals in tooltips. And how you do that is by creating a tooltips page. So I have this nice tooltips page that's just showing the revenue value, the units sold, and the variance, the year-to-date sales variance percentage. Now you can add other graphs in here or pictures or whatever would be relevant to your data. So back on my on my sales overview page, I'm going to go ahead and select this visual, and under my formatting pane, I can turn the tooltips to report page. And my report page is called tooltip. And once I do that, now when I hover over, I get that whatever I have designed on my tooltips page. So that makes for a much more visually appealing and dynamic hover experience for your end user, and you can also be a little more detailed in what you're showing in your tooltips as opposed to just boring numbers, right? You can make this as visually appealing as your actual graphs. It also helps as you're developing these reports. You'll probably run into a problem with real estate. You want to put a lot of information on a single page. So using the tooltips report page allows you to save on some of that real estate, so you can put those in a hover, and the way that the user interacts with it is with a hover as opposed to having it shown on the page the whole time. So that's one really cool feature that was released, and I can flip that back to default whenever I want. So now it's just showing the regular tooltips. Another cool feature that I really liked when it came out was the sink slicer, or the slicer sink. So imagine you're an end user and you're using these reports, and every page you go to, you have to change the filter on each page. So you see on this page, I'm analyzing 3/6/2008 to the end of 2017, but on this page, I'm analyzing just all data, and if I select 2006, this page is still showing its own set of data. So what I'm able to do now is sync my slicers. So if I go up to the view and I say sync slicers, I can actually select which slicers I want to interact with each other. So if I click on the date slicer here, I now see that I can link this to the Van Arsenal sales page. So if I select those two to sync, now when I click on when I select a date here, so we'll just clear that out, and I click on 2004, when I go back to my Van Arsenal sales overview, actually let me just update that to a drop down. And we should. All right, so we've got that. And then on Van Arsenal, should be over there. So obviously they have to be showcasing the same data. So I get the pop-up here. It says, hey, this is the same as the one you have on your other page. Do you want to sync it? And I say yes. So now when I go here, it works as I had anticipated, and I select 2007. Now anywhere I've synced that slicer is also showing that same filter. So I'm using a date here, but you could be using a category or some other filter. So that way the user is looking at the same data set that they were analyzing on a different page without having to manually update that. Another cool feature I wanted to talk about is the drill through. So let's take a use case here where instead of breaking this down by manufacturer, so Van Arsenal is the manufacturer, I actually want to just give the user an overview of all the details related to that manufacturer and not lack it specifically to Van Arsenal. So I'm going to make some updates here. I'm just going to get rid of the logo, and I'm going to change this to manufacturer, and I'm a really bad speller, just manufacturer. Manufacturer, sales overview. So now this is more generic, right? We're not stuck on Van Arsenal. I'm going to change the page so you can rename any of your pages. And I'm going to update this drill through feature. So here on my page, I'm going to go ahead and select manufacturer as what I want the drill through field to be. So when my user selects manufacturer, that's the filter I want it to apply. So now if I go back to my sales overview page, if I select, excuse me, if I select, let's clear out our filter here. I had an extra visual in here. If I select my manufacturer and I right click, I now have an option for drill through. Before we put that field in there, we did not have that option. A couple other options you have when you right click is drilling down to the next level. I'm going to go over that in 1 second. Show next level, expand next level. So this is all nested data within this visual, and show data. So a lot of people like this show data. When you do this, it actually, let's do something really fast since all my tables are white. We're going to import a new theme. Let's see if that works. There we go. So we can see here when I go to see data, it's going to give me all those values that make up this visualization. I can go back to my report. So now I have, when I right click, I have the drill through feature. Maybe lost it. So when I select the data point, I can see my page that I've selected as a drill through. So when I select this, now just to remember what I did, I'm right clicking on the Natura manufacturer. And when I select this, it takes me to the manufacturer sales overview page. And you'll see that the Natura is selected. Now there's no data, so that's a bad one. Oh, so there we go. We had a page level filter on there I forgot to remove. So now I've passed that filter of manufacturer through to this page. So all of my data is filtered by Natura. If I go back and I select this back button, and just a little heads up, like it says here, you have to, in the desktop, you have to click Control and then click the value or the button. If I do this for the Surus manufacturer and I go to drill through, now it's going to pass that through. Oh, I selected Prima or Priam, and now we see that the Priam manufacturer is selected. So it gives the user the ability to select a particular category or value here and get more detail on a page that you have designed for them. Now you can hide this page so that they can't navigate it to on their own, and we'll see that when I publish it to the web. So that means to the end user, they won't see this manufacturer sales overview page. All they'll see is the right click and drill through, and then they'll go to the manufacturer page. Let's see, what else did I want to go through quickly in the desktop? So as I mentioned earlier, I'm really just scratching the surface of some of the newer features. There's tons and tons of videos and web content that can go over just basic creation of visuals, so I didn't want to spend too much time on that, but I can certainly do a separate webinar for just the basic creation. Another thing I wanted to show quickly was the theming. I did it very quick here so I could have the tables show, but Power BI has released the ability to do custom color theming. So they actually have a gallery of themes which they've newly added the ability to switch them as you see fit from here. But you can also create your own custom theme that has your color branding for your organization or whatever you desire. And what that does is change the color palette that's available to you. So if I were to go into any of my data colors now, the color scheme that I have available is based off of my theme. So we have this orange one. If I went back to the electric one, now my color my color palette is different. I always have the ability to change the color to whatever I want. A little tip, if you are going to use theming, do it in the very beginning of the report before you build all the visuals, because if you've changed the default color to something manual, let's say on this one I change it to black, manually change it to black. When I change my theme, it's not going to override that color because I've chose it manually. So just a little tidbit is, if you're going to use theming, go ahead and do it in the very beginning. One other thing I want to touch on that makes Power BI unique is that custom visuals store. So you get, let's see, 3, 5, 15 or so visuals by default when you download the application. But you also have the ability to download some of the many custom visuals that are out there. So I'm just going to quickly show you how to do that. I happen to really like the Sparkline one, so I'm going to download that and change these 3 graphs to Sparkline. Now I can do that from the marketplace up here, or I can download the file and import it, or I can just select these ellipses and say import from marketplace. What that's going to do is bring up the Power BI visuals pane here. Now your organization can choose to publish specific visuals for you, or they can give you access to the whole marketplace. So you can see here there's quite a few custom visuals that are out there. There's some very good ones. I highly recommend looking at them. I have a couple of favorites. I think everybody kind of picks some that they really like. In this example, I'm just going to get a Sparkline. So I'm going to use, actually that's not all I want. There we go. So I'm going to add this, and all I do is click add. And now you're going to see that I have an extra little icon here, and that's my newly imported custom visual. When using custom visuals, be careful, do some research and some testing, because not all of them are compatible with mobile or Power BI embedded. So you'll just want to double check that the visuals you're using are going to carry through all the functionality you plan to use within the report. Same thing goes for exporting to PowerPoint or any of that other type of feature functionality, but they are very cool. So in order to change this to my Spark, all I have to do is select it, and I know it's selected by the little gray corners that I have here, and I'm just going to click on this. And now I have changed this visual to the Sparkline here. So I'm just going to go ahead and change the rest of these. And now we can see the different representation with a custom visual. So just a very fun thing to play with, because there's some really cool ones out there. Some very there's some fun ones, and there's some very useful business ones. So you can embed Visio diagrams and link different data to different steps in, say, a flow chart or something like that. So as the user clicks through the Visio diagram, your data is filtered by whatever you've tied within that report. Let's see, some great mapping visuals. Yeah, so I would just highly recommend going through here. Another thing that is great to look at is the help tab really fast. So Power BI has made it very easy for you to find all the resources that I'm not going to tap into on this call, but since I know I'm going through a lot in a very short amount of time, I want to make sure that I show you how to get to the areas where you can do some additional research. So if you click on the help tab, or go to powerbi.com. You have all sorts of resources available to you here. The one I want to point out is the Communities Gallery. And the reason I want to point this one out is because there are tons of sample reports that are available for free to browse and look at and give you some ideas of how to get started. There's also the themes gallery, so there was a link within the desktop application to do it from here, but there's also a link to the entire gallery of colors. So I'll just take a second to show you the data stories gallery. So these are all the themes, and the user community is very, very active for Power BI. So these are, as you can see, a lot of these are submitted by the user community and made available for public use. You can also customize the defaults for the visuals. So let's say you always want the text to wrap in your tables or things of that nature. You can really get very customized with these themes. The data stories gallery is, as I said, just examples of different reports. There's fun ones and there's business-oriented ones. There's, I believe, a report that shows all the custom visuals and how to use them. But if you select any of these reports, it's going to take you to the report and the blurb by who published it. So these are also submitted by the Power BI user community and are published here for anyone to take a look at. So if you need some ideas of what's possible, they're fully interactive, and you can browse through these and get some ideas. So again, that was in the help section of the Power BI desktop, or you can just go to them via the web search as well. I mentioned the Power BI blog, a very, very valuable resource to get alerted to the new feature releases that come out every month. And then there is some links to training videos and guided learning. So lots and lots of documentation and video help out there to get you started. One other thing before I move to the web service is the formatting for some of the design here. So you have the ability, like in other Microsoft products, to move visuals forward and backwards. So let's say this, I want this gray shape to be behind all of my charts. I can select the shape and then say send backwards, and that's going to showcase these visuals on top of this visual, so layering of the visuals. I can also change how different visuals interact with each other. So this edit interactions button is very important. So let's say I wanted these graphs to never filter by year because they look more boring. They're just a single point, right? So I want these always to be showing all data. So I do that by changing the interaction. So if I select the visual, that's the parent visual here, the one I want to interact with, and we see we have some additional icons here, I can just select the nope, nope, nope. And now when I change my date to 2003, these visuals, oops, these visuals should not change. But this will break that interaction between the visuals. So just be careful with what you're selecting, because the one you have selected should be the parent. So if I said I don't want this one to interact with this one, and I don't want it to interact with this one, and when I click on this, then those numbers don't change. So as you can see, everything else in the report is changing except these numbers, because I've broken that tie. So that can become useful in the story that you're telling and how you want your user to be able to visualize this data. Okay, so we have to switch quickly because we only have 15 minutes left. We have to switch to the web service. So I've spent all this time creating this fantastic report I feel it's ready for consumption to my end user. So I'm going to go ahead and publish it up to the web. Now this is a local file, so you can save this file and distribute it if you chose to. But typically, if you want them to access via the web, you're going to want to publish it up. So I've signed in with my user to powerbi.com, and I'm going to just simply click the publish button. We'll save the report. So what that's going to do is it's going to access my Power BI workspace, and it's going to give me access to any of the teams or Power BI workspaces I have access to. So everybody gets their own workspace, and then I'm also a member of a demo team and of demo team. So for this instance, I'm going to publish to the demo team, and I already have a version of this report up there, so I'm just going to replace it. Now what this is going to do is take that data and publish it up to the web. So we'll just go to powerbi.com, and that's once I sign in, it's going to take me to this interface. So what we see here is a dashboard of dashboards. So I have a single pane of glass here to see my most frequented and favorite and my most recent reports. I also have some pinned tiles. I can search for reports. I also have some quick links here on how to use Power BI. So I can navigate via this, or I can navigate via the left-hand side. So if I select favorites, it's going to show me all my favorites. Recents obviously is all the recent reports. Any apps I've loaded or published, reports that have been shared with me from other people. And this is how I change between my personal workspace and my demo workspace. And in classic Microsoft style, every time I log in, I see a new feature. Very, very key search feature here. I'm a member of over 100 teams, and it is very difficult to find the one I want. So this was apparently just released, which is awesome. So if you do have a lot of teams you're a member of, and this is tied to all O365 groups, not necessarily just Power BI groups. So this is a very valuable search. So I'm going to go ahead and change the team I'm working in, not to that one actually, to demo. And I now have two navigation options here. I have a breadcrumb option across the top, or I can navigate on the left-hand side. I happen to prefer the top here. So if I go to my reports, I see I have the harness the power of your data report. So if I select that, I now have access to my report. So a couple things I want to point out. Remember, we hid those pages in our desktop application. So you see how they're grayed out here. We do not see them. You'll notice we do not see them in the, lost my mouse, in the web application here. So as a user, I'm only seeing the pages that the report designer wanted me to use. So we'll go ahead and try our drill through. So when I click drill through, I now get taken to that manufacturer overview page, and it's filtered by the Van Arsenal, which I can see here because if I open the filters pane, I can see that my manufacturer is Van Arsenal. And when I select the back button, I'm taken back to the page. So all that feature functionality transferred up. I also want to point out that our custom visuals transferred through. So you can see that I have my spark lines, and if I were to go to edit this, which I have the rights to do, you can see that my spark line is still available here. So just showing how it kind of publishes the report as a whole. One really important thing everybody asks me is, how do I make the data refresh, right? So big value add or efficiency feature to using a BI tool is that you're trying to automate the data refresh or data capture so that it's not such a manual process. So here I have my report. That's great. I want to go to my data set and set up that refresh. So if I go to my report, I have a couple options. And the one I'm interested in right now is the view related. If I select this, it's going to show me everything that is tied to this report. So in this case, since I haven't built any dashboards, I just have my data set. I also want to show one other really important feature from the web. So this is only available in the web service, and that's metrics report. I'm not going to click on it because it takes 24 hours to gather the data. But if I were to select a different one, this is going to tell you who's accessing your reports, how often, when, via what method. So are they going via a mobile, a web, which page are they accessing? And I can see how many views, how many total viewers, and then how many total reports in the organization. This is something that your administrators can control, but assuming they allow you to view these report metrics as a report owner, you do have that ability to track usage of your reports. I also can share the reports directly from here. With the little share option. I can export, analyze in Excel. This is going to take all of this data and move it back into Excel, which in this case, not so relevant because it came from Excel, but might be relevant in other data connectors. The other thing that's very interesting and unique for Power BI is this quick insights. So if you select quick insights, this is going to actually give you some Power BI is going to go in and analyze your data and come up with some suggestions as to what it thinks it should do. It does take a little bit to load, so I don't want to spend too much time on it, but if you click Quick Insights, it's going to go in, analyze your data, and come up with a set of charts that it thinks is relevant. So in our case, you know, it would probably come up with units by state, or give you the variance between, or the delta between change over the years, and it's going to come up with those graphs. And once it comes up with those for you, you can either select to add them to your dashboard or just get rid of them. So it's a very cool feature to see what Microsoft comes up with, Microsoft computers come up with as valuable insights, right? And then the view related, and then settings. So what I want to do is go into my data set for the refresh, a reminder of what we're doing here, covering a lot, I know. If I click the ellipses and click settings, I now have some options for my data set. So as you recall, I said this was a data source of Excel. The Excel sheets were located on my desktop. So I've installed a data gateway because my desktop is considered a local data source. So in order for the web service to be able to refresh my data, it needs to be able to connect to my local PC and establish a connection to refresh that data. So you'll see under gateway, I have a personal gateway installed on my computer. There is an enterprise gateway that is available for enterprise deployments, and that can be shared with multiple users, so they can all be using the same gateway. So I have my gateway set up, and I've said that I want to use it for this report. And because I have a gateway set up, Power BI allows me to go to the schedule refresh and click on. Now I can have it refresh daily or weekly. I can change my time zone, and I can customize times. So you can do up to 8 times a day with the free version of Power BI and the Power BI Pro. If you are licensed for Power BI Premium, you can do up to 52 times a day. Ooh, that might be 54 now, actually, for the Premium. So I can set, 1 o'clock or 1:30, so it's only on 30-minute increments, AM or PM. So I wanted to refresh at 1, and I wanted to refresh at 9:30 AM. So I can add up to 8 times a day. And then I wanted to send me an email if it doesn't go through. I can also manually refresh the data as well. So if I went back to my data sets, I have the option. Let's say I updated my spreadsheet and I wanted it to go pull some new sales data. I can just click the manual refresh now. And that's going to establish that connection through the gateway and access those Excel sheets and pull in any new data. And then you get the statistics here of when the last time the data was refreshed. So a couple other things I want to touch on lightly is dashboards. So dashboards in Power BI are a little different than the word dashboard in some of its competitors. Dashboards in some of the competitors are actually what is reports generally in Power BI. Power BI dashboards are, the analogy I use is like a bulletin board. So you can pin tiles that are relevant to you onto a bulletin board, right? So let's say I have a tile on CTA usage I want to pin. So I can just select this little pin visual, and that's going to give me access to create either a new dashboard or add it to an existing dashboard. So in this case, I'm just going to say new, and I'm going to pin that. And now when I come back to my demo group, I have a new dashboard called sample. And you can see that the visual I pinned there is now there. So I can actually move this around. I can add other visuals. I'll just show you a couple samples. You can actually add data that has nothing to do with your reports. So I've embedded 2 YouTube videos here on this dashboard. I also have some hyperlinks to the custom visuals gallery that I was discussing in the Power BI community. But I have the ability to combine external links with report links. So if I click on my reports and I can pin a visual to that any dashboard that I have access to. So now when I go back to that dashboard, I see this visual that I've pinned. So a great way to combine important visuals that maybe you're tracking on a daily basis, and then you have the ability to subscribe to either a report or a dashboard, and Power BI will email you an image of this dashboard on a daily or weekly basis. So let's say I was tracking some relevant statistics from multiple different reports. I'll be able to get those emailed to me daily so that I can not have to come into Power BI and look at them, but of course there's a hyperlink to come to the report. So let's wrap it up because I have a little alarm that says I have 5 minutes left. But as you can probably tell, there is so much to cover with Power BI and what it's capable of. This is meant to be kind of an overview to get your ideas flowing here. Like I said, a great way to consolidate different disparate data sources. So any of your enterprise databases with any multiple combination of other data sources. So Excel with SQL or multiple SQL databases connecting to different applications, and bring those all into a single data source where you can connect them and make a key to connect all the tables and allow you to visualize all of that data in a single report, as opposed to logging into the different applications and pulling individual reports. I'm just going to click really quick on any questions that may have popped up.
We haven't had any questions come in, Amy.
Okay, great. So like I know it's a lot of data. We do offer here at Netrix and through the Microsoft MTC Center something called Dashboard in a Day. And what this is actually an all-day session that walks you through creating this same report that I have up here. So it'll take you through step by step with labs to help you create these reports and get a feel for how the Power Query mashup engine works and how you can model and mold that data, and then also how to take you through building a report and publishing it up to the web for consumption. One other thing I wanted, so you can feel free to reach out to Eric Edmonds here at Netrix, and he can get you those dates of when those sessions are available. And I believe Mike is going to put that in the chat for everyone to have available. The other thing I wanted to talk just very, very quickly about is the Power BI integration into the rest of the O365 stack. So if you are a user of other applications within Microsoft, so Teams or SharePoint or Power Apps or Flow, Power BI is very, very nicely integrated in those. You can actually embed these reports into the Teams interface, so I can pull any of these reports I've created in here, and my users can actually interact with these reports from the Teams interface. Or, so as you can see, this is loading our report in Teams, and we have full functionality. All of our filters work, so just like it works in the web, my users have full integration. Or I can actually embed this in SharePoint Online. So if I go to SharePoint Online, I have a different sample embedded in that page. And I'm sorry, Mike, did you want to say something?
You're good, Amy. Go ahead.
Okay. So as you can see here on my SharePoint page, I open up to my separate Power BI report that I have here, and I have full integration. I can interact with the report as I would in the web interface. This report has a what if analysis, so the user can even actually actively interact with the report as it was designed. So this is going to use this variable in an equation. So if I say 20 here, you'll see that all of my numbers will update, and now the equation that I have set up is going to use that and changes according to actual interaction from the user. So this is available via the web, SharePoint, Power Apps, Teams. So again, awesome integration with the rest of the O365 stack. So that's really all I wanted to touch on today. Like I said, we do offer all-day sessions that go into quite a bit more detail on how to build these reports. And actually, you are also able to bring in some of your sample data, and we'll work with you on putting together, getting started on some of your own data as well. Are we planning any webinars on Power Apps? Yeah, I have it up, Mike. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, I certainly, I have to check. I'm not sure of the dates, but I do believe we have webinars on Power Apps as well. Usually it's an integration, Power Apps and Flow. So those two we kind of marry together to automate. And I would just like to point out any of you that are not familiar with Flow. Flow is a automation, Microsoft's automation tool. So it's a workflow engine, and they have released connectors for Power BI alerts. So in the web service, something I didn't touch on is you can actually set alerts for metrics. So let's say you want to be alerted every time your revenue goes under 10,000. So you'll get that alert. You can also trigger workflow on that alert. So let's say every time my revenue falls below 10,000, I want to send an email to the sales team saying, hey, what are you doing? We have no sales. I can use a combination of Power BI for the trigger and then Flow for the automation of the email. So really, really cool interactions across the stack here. It really is unlimited, the power of Power BI. So just some really cool stuff. But yeah, I'll have Eric reach out to you with any future dates on any other upcoming webinars we have on Power BI, as well as the rest of the O365 stack. Any other questions? I want to be cognizant of time here. I know probably tapping into some people's lunches. There was another question about SharePoint 2013 on-prem. Yes, you do have to use Power BI embedded for on-prem SharePoint at this point. The Power BI web part is only for the SharePoint Online. If you're going to be embedding into SharePoint on-prem, you're going to have to use Power BI embedded. That was for Maureen. So that's about it, unless there are any other questions. Like I said, if you're interested in getting a more in-depth quote-unquote training or lab session on how to build some of these reports, again, reach out to Eric and we can get you that information.
Okay, thanks for joining us, everyone. Reach out to Eric Edmonds. The email address is in there if you have any more questions.
Thanks, and have a great week.